Today I'm going to show you how you can easily modify a preset to sound completely different. To demonstrate, I'll turn the Wurlitzer from my Sounds You Know preset pack into this Kaytraminé Wurlitzer from my new Hip Hop Classics preset pack. Here's how the Wurlitzer from my Sounds You Know preset pack sounds. And here's the Wurlitzer we'll be making today. As a starting point, I'm going to use the Wurlitzer Hard preset from my Sounds You Know preset pack. I also made a step-by-step tutorial on how to make that sound if you're interested. So when comparing this preset with the Whirly from Kaytraminé's beat, I noticed a few key differences. It sounded like it had louder, odd-ordered harmonics. I know this because it reminds me more of a triangle wave, which is only odd-ordered harmonics. I also noticed it was more mid-range heavy, and instead of having the traditional tremolo or panning, it sounds like it was using a chorus. To get started transforming this preset into Kaytraminé's, I'm going to start by adding in those odd-ordered harmonics. So I'm going to do that by opening up oscillator 3, and then choosing the triangle wave. I'm choosing the triangle wave because it only has odd-ordered harmonics, and they taper off in the upper register nicely. Then I'm going to turn off phase randomization to make sure that I'm only adding odd-ordered harmonics. I don't want this oscillator to be canceling out oscillator 1. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go to the wavetable editor by clicking this pencil icon. You can find the triangle in the third keyframe here. And now I'm going to turn down the volume of the fundamental because we're already getting a lot of that fundamental from oscillator 1. So I'm going to turn this down to about the volume of the 9th or 11th harmonic over here. So that should be good. And then I'm going to turn this up a bit to 0.8. I'm going to use envelope 3, which is a pretty short pluck here, to give more of this oscillator at the beginning of the note. So I'm going to drag this over. I'm going to set this to 0.15. And now we get this. We're getting more odd-ordered harmonics, but we're also getting kind of a buzz in the upper register from this triangle wave. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off this Wurlitzer key. It was such a subtle part of the sound, and I didn't notice anything in Kaytraminé's version. So I'm going to turn that off and then repurpose filter 2 here. So I'm going to switch this back to a low-pass filter, turn up the mix all the way. I'm going to turn off this modulation from velocity that's editing the drive. Make sure that's all the way down, and then I'm going to reroute this. So I'm going to route in filter 1. That's going to be oscillator 1 going through filter 1, and then I'm going to route in oscillator 3. Now I'm going to open this up a bit. I'm going to set this to 25 on the cutoff, and then I'm going to give it a little bit of key tracking at 20% just to open it up a little bit when you play in the high register. So now it sounds like this. Now that sounds pretty good, but it sounds a little too dull. The original sounded a little bit more bright. So I'm going to bring back in some more high harmonics by editing this comb filter a bit. So the purpose of this comb filter was to get more odd-ordered harmonics from oscillator 1. That's why I'm using the spread flange negative. This is boosting odd-ordered harmonics. The cut here will influence which harmonics are boosted more. So right now it kind of has a low cut. I'm going to turn this up a little bit to 12. And then for the mix here, I have high velocities turning down the mix because I didn't want as many odd-ordered harmonics in the high velocities, since my high velocities sounded pretty good. So I'm going to remove this. It's going to be 60% in the mix no matter what. So now it sounds like this. Now that sounds a little bit better, but I still want a little bit more from those high harmonics. So what I'm going to do is increase this modulation from the smear. The smear is giving us a little bit more emphasis on those odd harmonics, those high harmonics. So I'm going to take this from 0.08 to 0.12. Now, especially at high velocities, I'll notice just a little bit more from the high end there. So now that I've done that, I'm going to go over to the effects section and carve out the middle register, add in a chorus, and see if we can get this a little bit closer. So when I was making this preset, I went back and forth between my preset and the original recording, and fiddled with this equalizer until I felt like I got closer. So I'll just share the values that I got when I was doing that. So what I did was I pulled down this low shelf here, but not all the way. I set it to -13, and then I set the cutoff here to 57.2, and then the resonance at 6. Then I added in this little bump here at 5 decibels. The cutoff for this one was 104, and then the resonance was 14. Then I moved this high shelf here a little bit. This one's turned all the way down for the gain, and then I moved the cutoff up a little bit to 121.8. Now that sounds a lot closer to me. So one thing I noticed about the original, the Kaytraminé Wurlitzer, is that it didn't have that traditional panning and tremolo thing, so I'm going to turn that down, and then I'm going to get back some of that movement from a chorus. I'm going to turn on that chorus, and it sounds like this. But that's a bit much. I'm going to dial it back to 25%. And now that sounds a little bit more like a Kaytraminé preset. So I'm going to dial back a little bit on the reverb too. It sounds a little bit too spacious. So somewhere around 0.8 or 0.7 for the time. I'm going to dial back the size a little bit too, just to make that reverb a little bit more subtle. So this preset already sounds really close to the Kaytraminé Wurlitzer, but I want it to function a little bit better as a complete instrument and sound a little bit more like a real Wurlitzer in the upper register. Because if I go up an octave, it sounds good, but it doesn't really sound like a Wurlitzer. It's a little bit too bright. So I'm going to use this note modulation here to turn down some of those upper harmonics. Now I'm getting those upper harmonics from a few places. I'm getting them from the triangle wave. I'm getting them from this smear modulation. And I'm also getting it from this formant modulation and this wavetable position. So what I'm going to do is use the note modulation to make higher notes have less triangle wave, less smear modulation, and less wavetable modulation. So first I'm going to do the triangle. So I'm going to drag this over to the volume of oscillator 3. It's going to default to a positive value, but I want this to be negative. So negative 0.25. And then what I'm going to do is remap that modulation, because there's only a narrow register I really care about. So I'm going to set the grid here to 6. I'm going to pull down this dot to the middle here. And basically starting on this note, we're going to increase that modulation up until this note when it hits 100%. So I believe this note down here is about an E flat, an octave up. And then this note up here should be about a C sharp. Somewhere between a C and a C sharp. So now I want to do that same thing, that same process, but for some more modulations. So this is a bit complicated because the smear modulation is being controlled by envelope 2. That modulation is being controlled by velocity. And then that velocity modulation is being controlled by macro 4. So you kind of need to follow the trail of breadcrumbs here to find your modulation, and you can do that by going through the matrix, sorting by source, sorting by destination, sorting by modulation number, and then finding out where that modulation is being taken place. So I already did that, and I found out that in the original preset, it's modulation 4 amount, and then modulation 6 amount here. So I'm going to drag over the note modulation here to both of those. And then I'm going to go back to the matrix, sort by source, and then go over to these note modulations. And I'm basically going to do this exact same thing, but in reverse here. So I want those modulations to take place in the low register, but don't want them taking place in the upper register. So I'm going to do something like this, and then I'm going to copy this and paste it over here. So now hopefully those high notes won't sound as bright. Still might not sound quite like a Wurlitzer up there, but at least it's closer. This preset really shines mostly in the mid register and the low register, like it does in Kaytraminé's song. Anyways, that's it for this tutorial. I hope it gave you some ideas for how you can change presets and put your own spin on them and make them your own. It really doesn't take much in order to make a preset sound completely unrecognizable from the original. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.